Biscuits, welcome back to the channel. So I thought I would do a fun topic that I love. I'm gonna sit back in my chair and get all comfy. The weirdest romance novels I've read. So I don't think I'm gonna name novels or books because if I say, I don't want to say anything disparaging about books because you know it's each to their own, but I'm gonna give you genres and weird scenes that I've read. So I'm gonna start with books I have not written, and then I'll talk about my books because I don't think my books are as weird as some that I've heard. Okay, I think the single weirdest one I have read had, like, and this is an erotica novel, right? Like, that's the kind of romance that I love to read. Had a biker gang in it, and it was super violent. Like, you don't think of romance novels as a violent topic, right? And by the end of this, I was just reading it going, like, it had other good scenes in it, but it was super a romance novel written by a dude. It was from dude's perspective, and it was so unusual that it stuck with me because most romance novels are written more to like the female gaze, the female idea of what is pleasurable and beautiful and enticing. And this was totally written to a dude's perspective, particularly a dude that liked like violent, weird stuff. And I don't mean that in the romance department. I mean like extra plot lines in the book were all this aggression and stuff. And it was so weird because I walked away from it and was like, you know, where's my dashing duke and my romance of bouquets and flowers? And, you know, it was totally not the genre I normally read. I was so surprised by that. I love romance novels that just make you feel good, like you're happy after you read them, you know? Like I have a romance series that I wrote, and the first book in the series is called Those Last 10 Pounds. And there's actually a fourth book that's eventually going to come out in that series. You shall see, Biscuits. But it is about an actress who falls in love with this trainer, and you know it's very, very saucy and very detailed in the naughty department. But it is like it's joyful, it's happy, you feel good after reading it. And I feel so uncomfortable with romance books where you feel cruddy after reading them. I'm like, that is not what I'm looking for in this genre. I read a book once that was romance and pretty graphic romance. I wouldn't call it erotica. It was like maybe more graphic romance genre instead of erotica. And it was one of the few times I left a bad review for a book, which I don't normally do because I was so offended at how triggering and upsetting the ending was. And I'm not per se an easily triggered person, you know, I don't need my uber safe space. But I was just so offended by it. And so books that have like sorrowful endings or like tragic partings, I've read books where like the main romance character has to like give up her children or something for part of the book. And like what kind of romance book is this? No, we want the fantasy of a perfect ending, you know, or the fantasy of the perfect beginning to a life full of love. And so I've been so surprised when I have just read crazy things in books. So I write a lot of books in the sci-fi erotica genre. So, you know, saucy aliens that love the lady. So I have a whole series that's a reverse harem series, Man, Her Station, and others. And it is just such a pleasure to write it. But maybe the characters are some of the characters are a little bit darker than I generally write. But all of them, like, you know, everybody gets a happy ending. But no, a real happy ending, you know, for what's going on in the characters' books, even if they deal with different issues or concerns. And I love that about books, that you get to kind of pick and choose what kind of ending do you want. You know, you want a heads up on what the subject matter is going to be. And I always get really tossed and thrown through a loop when it's not what I really need for my topics. I will be right back, Biscuits. Sorry, Biscuits. Family life interrupted there. I am back talking about my romance novel topics. So I love reading romance novels. Like, it is just one of those things that when given a genre to pick, I will pick all sorts of subgenres of romance because I love it. I feel like if it doesn't have a subplot, in the genre of romance, why am I ingesting that entertainment, right? Like reading it, watching it, listening to it. But I've definitely come across weird books. And so I tried to watch the 50 Shades of Grey movie for the first time. And I know that's not technically reading, but you know, it's in the romance genre. And it was just so poorly energized that I couldn't watch it. It wasn't the topic. It was just like, in a romance novel, any story, you need to care about characters, right? And these characters, I cared absolutely. Like, I gave up. I think I was live stories from Instagram while I was watching it, and I was like, I had to give up. I couldn't do it anymore. It was too ridiculous of a story. Like, there was no one there I was rooting for. There was nothing that I was waiting to happen that was going to be great. I'm like, oh, it's not a saucy that makes you go, oh, I'm titillated. It was just kind of like, no, thank you. I didn't need to know that about you. Thank you. Which is how I feel about some books. I have long read a series that's a super long series. It's about like immortal creatures, so like werewolves, vampires, valkyries, you know, that kind of thing. And some of those books, great fun, saucy, a little rough and tumble, you know, uber aggressive alpha men, which I love for a book. Like, it's great fun to have alpha male characters in books because I feel like we've lost that type of archetype of masculinity in real life. I cannot think of a man that I have met that's like the archetype of an uber alpha male. And I don't mean like a jerk, which is I think what a lot of people assume like an alpha male is, but you know, strong, confident in themselves, you know, and forceful in the way that they go through life. And so it's fun to have that particular type of man saved, at least in the romance genre, as it's, I think, gone extinct. Okay, this is a question for you, Biscuits. Leave in the comments. Can you think of anybody you know, or yourself if you're a guy, of a man that really fits that archetype of a good alpha male? Not a jerk, but just an actual alpha male. I think that species of man has gone extinct, apparently. I don't know what's happened. I'm curious to hear what your opinion is on it. And I think that that's part of why women love the romance genre in general, is that it keeps alive archetypes of masculinity that we just don't see in society anymore. Like, I feel like there's a lot of types of men that just seem to have disappeared. Maybe we just aren't raising them culturally. I don't know. I don't know what's happened, but they just seem to have gone away. And I feel like that's part of the draw for romance. So when you read a book and, you know, the characters are whiny dudes, like I've come across some romances where the dudes are just, you're like, why is the lady with this guy? She can do better. You don't want to be thinking that for your romance novels. But I have great fun judging my romance characters whenever I read them. I'm like, oh wow. And you know, when I'm creating my characters, I always put thought into like, how can they be realistic? And I love to base them off of people. Sometimes I combine a couple people into one. But how can they also be people that you wish you knew them, either friendship or romantically? When you're done reading that book, you're like, oh man, I really wish that person existed. And I think that's the fun. And I like to always pick out, you know, when I'm done with a book, writing one, I go, oh, what's the character I really wish that I could actually meet? And I think that's great fun. And I always find myself drawn to the classically masculine characters that have a gentle undertone that only the lady knows about. Those are always my favorite ones. And as I've been working on turning my romance novels, the paranormal romance genre, which is kind of like witches and spooky spells and things, into the streaming series, it's been so fun to try and figure out like what characters, because we're starting with just one witch, just Agatha, and then we're going to spread out and get the actress for the other characters, to bring them along. And like, you know, what do you want to bring over from the books? What practically can we bring over from the books? Right now we're doing ones that are like getting to know the main character backstory kind of stuff that wasn't in the novel, and then going into the novel is going to be fun. I have no idea how we're going to film Rasputin scenes. Leave the emoji for what character Rasputin is if you've read my book, Which Way to Romance, because that character is one of my favorite characters I've ever written, because he's just so dang evil and just joyous in his evilness, and that alone is entertaining. Okay, Biscuits, I can keep talking about romance for hours, but I'm gonna go tidy up the house a little bit because it needs it. So I will see you in the next video.